First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji, host of Tier Talk. Guess who I got with me? The president of the New Jersey chapter of the American Correctional Association, Bob Riccadella, a good friend of mine, by the way. First off, today, guys, this is great stuff. We're going to show you another facet of corrections, another effort that people don't really see that we're doing behind the wall, especially with working behind the wall to the connection to the community. And right now I'm at a reentry event at Mercer Community College, and the reentry event is brought to us by the New Jersey chapter of the American Correctional Association. It's actually titled Reentry from the Inside Out. What does that mean, Bob?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity, Anthony. Anthony is my man. He does a great job. I love his show, Tier Talk. He gets the message out there. But what this conference is basically about is that in the corrections field, we know that we can't warehouse people. We're trying to get people to change their lives. We're trying to get programming to them, try to get meaningful programs that will help them to see the light and change and give them the tools to come back into society and live a regular life.
And that's the key, guys. I think that's a part of corrections that gets overlooked, and that also kind of promotes what we do. A lot of people don't realize the work that goes on behind the wall. So this is an effort to try to continue that hard work and just to kind of keep people on the path that I believe originates once they get behind that wall and they start their path to rehabilitation. Now, who sponsors this event?
CFG, which is a health, they basically do the health services and psych services for people who are inside the prisons. And then Volunteers of America is a nonprofit corporation that does a lot of reentry services. I think you're going to see with the panels today, you're going to see a bunch of great speakers who are coming from all over the, people who work inside the prisons, people who work outside the prisons, and you're really going to get a good look at what we're doing, the programming, and how things are changing, and how we're developing better programs to really help people change their lives.
Now, just in case, guys, if you're ever interested in coming to a future event, how do we go about promoting what we do? Like, I mean, we've been promoting this or working on this event for months now. How would someone from the outside look at it?
You can go to our website, NJACA.org. This event is listed. All of our events are listed. It is a pretty good website. You go on there and you can sign up. You can look at what we're doing. You can even become a member. You can, which I strongly recommend that everybody become a member, because we are offering these trainings and having these these conferences so that we can get the word out there as to what we're doing, but also we're trying to develop better stuff and better programs as we're doing these conferences, and hopefully learn and then build on our learning.
Well, what's very unique about, at least I can only speak on behalf of the New Jersey chapter, is the executive board has a lot of diverse members that represent different parts of the correctional system, or just in general, the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. So we look to provide training that's geared for almost everyone and everything involved in the system. So we have training that really hits us on the front line. I mean, I believe just last year we were doing training on stress for frontline staff. Great training.
Which no one ever even looks at.
Nope.
No one ever looks at the people who are working inside the prisons, whether it's the corrections officers or any of the people providing the services. The stress that they have to deal with on a day in, day out basis is really, it's shocking.
It's shocking.
It's shocking.
And what's great is to see that sometimes when we do an event that connects to the community, it's great that we have events like this that now, when we have that connection to the community, we're able to now bring that community into the light of what we do. Mm-hmm. Behind the wall, and also how what we do kind of goes into what's happening inside the community. So it's a balance.
And I think you made a great point earlier about our board is very diverse. We have a 20-member board, so we have people from corrections, from parole. We have people from the provider community, people from the county jails. So we have a pretty good overview of all the things that are going on inside of corrections. Inside of the treatment community also. So we're developing some good programs.
Yeah, and I think by having such a diverse field or diverse people on the board, it does bring about a greater respect for the profession on all sides of it. Now, because
one of the things I do want to say is that New Jersey leads the country in what we do. We are number one in de-incarcerating our prisons, and at the same time we have done that, we have lowered the real crime rate and the recidivism rate. So what we're doing is paying off. New Jersey is also, I think, we're number 42 or 43 in the rate of people incarcerated in America. So we've had great successes over the last 15 years, 10 years, but there's more to do, and we know that. And conferences like this will help us get to that point where we can build on that.
And by the way, success, the reason why I believe New Jersey is so successful is because we really believe in teamwork. We really believe in working together to complete whatever's needed for the agency or for the state.
Years ago, a lot of the agencies were in silos.
Right.
And didn't speak to each other, so nobody was really working with anybody else to sort of build a better program. And now those silos are completely broken. I think we all realize in order to do this and to do it better, we need to communicate, we need to work together, and that's what's going on.
And we talked about that before, guys. I believe that, especially for the correctional officers that are in the field, I believe that, you know, that law enforcement title, stuff like that, does help with that communication. It shows that we're all connected and we do have that same mission, obviously to protect and serve, but there's also that part of rehabilitation that balances everything out.
Because we don't want to warehouse people. That does not work for society. It does not work for the people that we're trying to help. We need to do better, and by working together,
Until we achieve it.
we'll achieve it.
And it's funny because we just did a video on role models, and a lot of positive comments came from the officers who do believe that they have an impact, and also the civilian staff members who are most important in playing that important role in, you know what, we're here to devote time to make sure that we make sure that these inmates don't make those same choices that brought them in. And there's a great balance between rehabilitation and safety and security, and that leads to the success and also leads to maybe where we're at today. Like where Jersey's at right now.
But you also make another great point. You know, you speak about paradigm shifts. Today's corrections officer realizes that he's not just a guy keeping people locked in a cell, that he's playing, and he or she is playing an integral part in helping that person to change their life and facilitate the programs and to have safe prisons, because if prisons are safe, then we can do the programming we need to do.
And that's always the key. Now, I also want to mention, she couldn't be here right now. She's overly involved in what we have going on. She literally is the backbone for planning these events, and her name is Sherry Sandler. I just wanted to give her a quick little shout out because I believe she's
Sherry, this thing could not work without Sherry. I mean, she does a great job. She knows everybody from every aspect of our field, and you know, it's just wonderful.
Yeah, so again, Sherry, if you get to see this video, which I'm sure you will, we thank you. Tier Talk, obviously us, NJACA,
Absolutely.
the profession,
Absolutely.
you know, we thank you for all you do. So, all right, guys, I'll give you a little taste of the event. We're going to go kind of see some B-roll footage, but I'm also going to interview some of the people that are speaking today. I'm not going to record the panel discussions. I'm going to get a chance to see them after the panel discussions, and we're going to kind of go over what they discussed, just to give you guys a taste of what's in store. And not just about today. Remember, guys, this is about tomorrow. So, all right, guys, enjoy.
Brother, thank you.
I am so pleased to welcome many of you back, and maybe some of you are the first timers here. I hope you enjoy it, and then you'll continue to come. I have been just invited to join you for the next 10 years. I think my answer is absolutely yes. So we'll dance together for the next 10 years on this.
Today, we're pleased to have you join us as we highlight the work done in 5 counties, Camden, Cumberland, Ocean, Morris, and Passaic, as well as state and federal initiatives.
This event is really important because there's a lot of things going on in the state of New Jersey now. We're all trying to do better in turning people's lives around and really getting people to stop with the destructive behaviors to themselves and to society. And we can't do that without the people in this room who are helping to build better programs and get things going so we can turn their lives around and benefit society.
I'm already hearing a little theme about partnership, and that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. Reentry. A major part of our efforts with our population is focused on reentry. And most of our inmates will be coming out into the community at some point. But all our preparation inside will fall mute if we're unable to make a soft handoff to our community and state partners who share our commitment to public safety.
Striking a decisive balance between protecting our society through public safety supervision while fostering the successful rehabilitation of offenders through the implementation of rehabilitative programs that absolutely work.
When we think about juvenile justice, we really think about rehabilitation and treatment. That is the focus of our efforts. And as a director of juvenile parole and transitional services, most of that falls upon me and my staff. And fortunately, I have a wonderful staff. Many are sitting in the back row, and a few of which you'll hear from one of our panels today.
All right, guys, so we just got done with our first panel discussion. By the way, again, just a great discussion on reentry, but I want to have the people at this table, they participated in the panel. They were the ones providing us with the great information. I would love for you guys, if you don't mind, if you can introduce yourself to my audience, starting with the gentleman from the right.
Hi, I'm Rick Bacon. I'm a volunteer for GED program at Cumberland County Correction Center.
And I'm the GED teacher at the Cumberland County Detention, or wait a minute, the Cumberland County Department of Corrections. Sorry, I was in the juvenile division for a long time, so that sticks in my head.
Linda Solani, Cumberland County Department of Corrections, Reentry Program.
Well, first, let me be the first to thank you guys for your service. I think a lot of times people don't realize the work that goes behind the wall, especially we talk about security, but we also talk about efforts to rehabilitate and that partnership between security and rehabilitation, knowing that we both depend on each other to get the mission done. So again, thank you for being a big part of that mission, and I can't wait to see how far we succeed with this mission. Guys, what was good about this dialogue that we had today, guys, and I'm going to try to get it more in our future interviews that we have today, but there was a very big partnership between the people that are providing programming, the people that are trying to connect the inmates or the ex-offenders to programs on the streets with the custody staff that work in those facilities. And I thought that was great, and that's why I think it's really important for us to have this dialogue, because it kind of brings things to a full circle. Now, the cool thing here is that outside of the partnership, I see that there's a lot of involvement, a lot of people that are really interested in the information that you guys are providing on the panel, and I was wondering what has changed in regards to the interest of reentry compared to what the interest that we had maybe yesterday and the interest that we had today.
Linda, you probably would be better off in answering that, because I've only been at the jail for the last 4 years, so I never really saw the reentry end of it because I was in the juvenile situation. So,
I think the people are starting to realize that they are coming back to your community, and what are we going to do with them when they come back to the community? Which is a good question, because we have so many that are homeless. We have so many that are addicted, whether it be to alcohol or to drugs. We have so many of them have burned bridges with their families that they have no support system or a positive support system. So I think politicians, the general public, everyone has started to take a notice that, you know what, we need to do a little bit more, we need to up our game. When I first started with what they called pre-release, was in 2003, and it was a very minimum of what we're doing now. I think the 2009 Fair Release and Reentry Act made it step up a little bit, but over the last few years with reentry, joining partnerships, people realizing we need to do this for the ex-offenders when they're released, and we need to start before they're released to get them back into the community as law-abiding citizens. The barriers that have been for years and years we're trying to crack, which is Social Security cards replacements. So they have a Social Security card. They have a copy of their birth certificate, because if you're always transit, you're losing everything. We give them a 90-day workforce ID, which is a photo ID. When they leave the Cumberland County Department of Corrections, they can use it for 90 days, where their regular ID is usually good for only 30 days. So this way they can go look for work, they can take it to different agencies and show this is me, has their birth date on it, and all their vital information. They can go to motor vehicle with that as an ID. And with the barriers that we can try and release, either prior to release or right after they're released, that helps out at the beginning. So that's where we're at now, and we're trying to find them work before they're released, trying to hook them up with Medicaid, like the day before the release, if it's been terminated. Try to get them to their medical appointments, to their mental health appointments. Get them all the follow-up calls. Okay, did you take your meds? Did you pick up your meds since you left the correctional facility? I think because there's more attention and more people wanting to work with ex-offenders, that I think the attention's there in everybody's community.
And I like what you're mentioning, because you're also talking about, guys, just for us to be aware, we're talking about safer communities, because obviously when there's inmates coming out and they don't feel that they have a sense of hope, to me, someone without hope is one of the most dangerous individuals you'll ever meet. So I definitely feel that there has to be a partnership with the hard work that's done behind the wall. I mean, again, custody providing an environment where rehabilitation can occur, and then having people behind the wall that's devoted to that rehabilitation. And again, doing it unnoticed, because again, behind the wall, a lot of people don't really see the hard work and effort. So now, I've always thought the concerns, and maybe I'll throw it over to this side of the table, was that connection between what's being done behind the wall and the community. And she talked a lot about lifting those barriers. Now, one of them was the transition, right? But just out of curiosity, what is some of the work that you're doing behind the wall that should have that connection to the outside, like education, programming?
Well, teaching the GED program, it's a lot of satisfaction comes out of that, not just as a teacher, but watching how our students work so hard. GED before 2013, and I'm not discounting it prior to 2013, because it still was a GED test and it still had some difficulties to it, but right now GED has, the level of it has increased, which is why they actually call it the HSE, the high school equivalency. So instead of just doing multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, you're also doing algebra. So the work that is involved in the inmates putting, in the time into a GED class and seeing all the effort that they have to put into it, to me should relate to the outside when they leave the facility. And they go someplace, for a job, and they say, I got my GED, just this past year. Maybe the people that are giving them the job should look at that with a little bit higher of a level, because they're working very hard to get these GEDs. It's not just going in, taking the test, here it is anymore. It's also gives them a lot of respect to know, I think self-respect to know that they work so hard to do this, because it is not a given. Anybody who takes that test, I would say probably the general population might not pass it the first time around, so you really have to work at it. So I think that them taking the test and passing it alone is just an ego boost that might help them on the outside.
Right, and if I may, what people may not realize is for each inmate that graduates or a potential ex-offender, the amount of work that it goes in from all departments. I mean, again, I think it's something, again, we talked about, it goes unnoticed, but it's not just a recognition of the individual who did make that effort to make the change, that did make the effort to move forward and be positive, but it's also an effort from the people who support that and continue to support that. And sometimes we don't realize the influence that we have on these individuals' lives. I actually just did a video of being a role model towards inmates, and it was a great response from the frontline staff, because they said, you know what, Gans, you're right. You know, we have these positive interactions in a negative environment, and it becomes that much more powerful because these inmates never maybe had a chance to have someone tell them, this is what life is, this is right, this is wrong. And some of them will embrace it, and you'll see their adjustment, and some unfortunately will use it for nefarious reasons. But either way, it's also a good mark of the hard work that goes on behind that wall.
Yeah, and another way of putting it is, I think if you can instill some self-respect into an inmate, it goes a long ways. I mean, all these things that we're talking about, I think the bottom line, if you can get somebody to respect themselves and they go out in the community, they have a much better chance than before. And we try to do that in the classroom. We treat them with respect, and in time, I think, encourage their accomplishments, and I think they start to respect themselves. At least it seems that way to me, and we do consciously make an effort to do that.
Right, and I think that if you provide the solutions behind the wall, I think, because that obviously is the start, I think that opens up their minds to saying, you know what, if I could do it here, I could do it elsewhere. And I think part of the issue that we have with inmates is that, or ex-offenders, is that they feel that they're not welcomed when they get released to the community. And I feel that's another resistance. And I feel that what we do, I know there's a lot of programs now that bring people from the public in to interact with the inmates. We have like engaged in the family programs. We have programs that where we have students come in from school, like colleges, and that's where they have to take the course. They're taking the course inside the prison setting. And it's great, because one thing is, you could have like the stereotype that the people behind the wall are, you know, extremely violent, all this other stuff, and people are afraid to, I don't know if I want to take this course. But then when they get involved, they actually, there's a sense of humanity there. I can't explain it. Mm-hmm. And then on the other end, for the inmates who feel that we're not going to be embraced, well, now you're sitting in a classroom that actually supports you. That, when we talked about that number today, 83% are graduating honors. That's obviously there's a collective system involved in that, but there's also a level of support that's being provided from people who are from the outside. Yes. Looking in. I also noticed one of the frustrations, actually, maybe we'll end on this question. I thought this was actually pretty interesting. Interesting was that a lot of inmates, when they feel that there's no connection from the hard work that they do behind the wall and the hard work that they must continue to do when they get released, they wind up having to do things over again. So if we start an inmate, let's say, just generally speaking, national level, not specific to any state or agency, but if you have an inmate that starts in, like, let's say, a GED program, or starts in a family program or something, and just by some reason, let's say they get parole before they can release, or maybe there's a change in their max out, or court, whatever it is, and they don't get a chance to complete it, they get frustrated because when they get released, they have to start everything over again. So I think that connection is very important, because the inmates that get frustrated from starting over again, is a way to communicate with those prior providers to say, hey, this is where we're at. So do we see that type of communication now, kind of like they mentioned at the panel, the handoff? Are we starting to get that now more so than ever?
I know in the GED program we do have that, because our consortium in the area, I can say, all right, listen, if you're not, you haven't completed the test, but this is where you have to go to take it. And then I will make the phone call to that coordinator and say, expect so-and-so to show up. And I'll make a phone call to the inmate when he leaves and say, you know what, you got to go see this person. So we try and make that connection. And one of their main things is always, well, do I have to take this over again? Do I have to take that over again? As far as the TABE testing goes, which is showing their assessment, no, as long as it's within a certain amount of time. And that's important with the GED also, that I also stress you need to keep up with it, because if you wait 3 years and don't touch that GED, that you haven't passed everything, then it will go away. But as long as you keep at it and keep testing and testing until you pass it, you're okay. So they have to, they have to do it on their own a little bit, but there's always people that are willing to help them, as long as they are willing to take the steps also.
Well, that's the key. I always say people have to want to change.
Right.
And if you don't want to change, you don't have that initiative, you know, I'm not going to force you to change because I'm spending all this time on you, and I have other people that want to change. And I have to sometimes, I know it's crazy, guys, but you gotta, if this person's invested in it, now I'm wasting my time on people that aren't. I'm losing out on the person that really I could affect. Now, just in closing, I just wanted to know if there's anything you'd like to say, and you know, to the audience out there about what you guys do, or maybe just some final closing remarks on the importance of that communication between the inside and the outside.
Well, let me just say, as far as, since it's the correctional, our correctional officers at our facility, most of them are extremely supportive with our program, and I have a lot of them that will come up to me and say, well, you know, how do I get this person involved, and just have them fill out a request. So it's really important to have the officers be supportive and encourage and not discourage the people that come in, you know, to go to reentry, to apply for drug and alcohol, to apply for the GED program. Anything that is in your facility, it's very important for the officers to encourage and not discourage the clientele.
And I find that
That's
with the audience that I have here, especially off the video I did yesterday with the role models, there are a lot out there that do it, because believe it or not, we want units that pretty much are easily managed. You know, we don't want the fighting all day. We want people that, you know, are making an effort to move, and they really think, like, if I do this, I got something to lose. And it's good because it motivates them to stay on the right track. And I really feel that there's a lot of our custody staff that do support the mission, that do understand that, you know, I know there's a lot of people, I would love to see a cross-perspective training of, you know, basically get an understanding of what each person's part is in the mission. But I think there's a lot out there that really understand that we may have separate parts in the mission, but we need each part to complete the mission. Sir, do you have anything you would like to say?
No, everything's been said that I can think of.
Ma'am?
Just to say, especially for a county corrections officer, they're coming right back into your community.
That's the key.
So that's a big key where a state correctional officer may not see that inmate. So if they do see the county inmate or the county ex-offender, and they see that they're homeless, they're collecting, you know, got the little cup out or whatever on the corner, say, hey, have you called your reentry case manager? You know, they're there for your support.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people here that have bumped into former inmates on the streets, you know, and they're going to recognize you, you know that.
Exactly.
So it'd be pretty good for them to come up and say, hey, remember that advice you gave me a while ago? It kept me out. Again, guys, thank you guys for taking your time out of your busy schedule. I thought the panel that you guys did was truly amazing. I saw there was a great interest. And again, just to say it again, thank you guys for everything you do behind the wall. You're also, in my opinion, and I'm sure it's fact with my audience here, you are also unsung heroes. And I think it's about time that we bring what you do in the shadows to light.
Thank you.
Get ready for the next one. Back for part 2 of the panel discussion. So again, we had a prior panel, which I had a few of them come on, so I was able to pick up you two ladies. Thank you very much. I'm trying to give you everybody, but unfortunately this is an ongoing event, so while I'm interviewing them, there's still people actually presenting their panel. So I do want to thank you guys again for sitting down at the interview. Now, this was great, guys. So the first discussion that we had was with education. I also noticed that your panel touched on education a little bit. I think it was towards the beginning, correct? And I know people, and again, we touched on it the first conversation, but maybe I can just get another perspective, is people are talking about the continuation of services and the frustration that inmates get when they're pulled out of, let's say, the completion of a GED because they're either being paroled or, and when I say the frustration, it's not from being paroled, it's the frustration of having to redo it again. Is there something that we're trying to do to try to keep things fluid? Are we trying to work to connect both parties, inside and outside?
So what we notice in the jail is people don't know when their release date's going to be. They're mostly pre-sentenced. So often they're hesitant to even start programming that has some sort of completion to it, like the GED program. They seem hesitant to even start because they think right off the bat, oh, well, I'm not going to be able to finish, so what's the point? So that's one of the things that we've had. We've noticed.
It's funny that you touched on to that because that's part of the internal buy-in. Towards the end of this panel discussion, I noticed that there was a lot of interaction. And I don't know if it's because the crowd's more comfortable now, because I thought the first panel was great too, but definitely the second panel it went past the time because people still had questions to ask. And the young lady at the end mentioned something about the internal buy-in, like, you know, people have to want to program. That's a major wall for you guys, right? If they don't know when they're being released and they're saying, well, you know what, I'm not going to pick up on this because if I do, there's a chance I'm not going to complete it. How do you even make the attempt to convince that person to still at least make the effort?
So I'm an educator, and
by the way, thank you for your service, ladies.
You're welcome. My whole thought is the more education you can give somebody, the more buy-in that they're going to have. So if you can give them reality, like, listen, you might start in the jail and it may not get completed, but in life, not everything is like peaches and cream. So in life, you're going to have ups and downs. It's teaching them how to deal with the ups and downs and how to set realistic goals and what needs to happen. Like, what buy-in do they need to put into it? And honestly, I'm a big heart. Go for their heart. You can make big changes if you go for somebody's heart.
I agree with that.
We definitely use a lot of motivational interviewing as well, because I'll find that a client may not be ready for change, but when I kind of probe and discuss and challenge different like conflicts that they're having within their own mind, we can kind of work towards, well, what are your hesitancies, and can we maybe help you to have some sort of rebuttal against those, or help guide you to your own learning and your own change of perspective.
Now, do you guys feel that at jail level you set the trend, just in case these inmates are going to be sentenced to a year or more? Do you guys set the trend where if you get the hard work starting at the jail, how do you communicate with the prisons now to see that the person you started on this right track continues to stay in that route?
So that would be a question for some of our other programs actually may do that, but since we're here for reentry, we are pretty much working only with the people that we know are reentering from our jail, with the hopes that whatever prison they're going to has a reentry program that will then be helping them reenter at that point.
Right, but obviously we would agree that at one point we definitely would like to have that connection between the jail and the prisons. And again, I always usually focus on the prisons.
I agree.
My
we get a lot of people all of a sudden calling us from the outside, like, I just got released from prison. Can you help me? I heard about the STAR program.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's just the two of us right now. So, and part of it is safety. Like, we've never met that person. So if you've been convicted of murder, the two of us aren't going to go out by ourselves,
of course,
to meet somebody in the community that we've never met. So part of our safety thing is that we have to meet them within the jail and build that relationship. So I know, like, where I can push you, where I need to help you, and then we consider, or we carry that out in the community.
You actually mentioned a good point. So how does what you do behind the wall interact with the community?
A lot, very much so.
Okay, we'll be able to walk us through a little bit, because I think I always tell people, and I think my audience would agree, is that there is always that gap between what's done behind the wall in the shadows, from all levels, from all departments, and then how we connect that to the community. So you guys may be like trailblazing a little bit, meaning that you're finding the gap and you're bridging it. So how are we bridging that gap?
For our clients who have a release date, we do very different things based on whether someone has a release date or whether they don't. But for our clients who have a release date, we write an individualized transition plan. We call it an ITP between ourselves. And in that plan, we're writing immediate direct services, so things that they need right away in that first week. That's a stabilization piece. Do you need shelter? Do you have any sort of income? Those kinds of things. But then we do ongoing goals that include both strategies that can be taken within the jail and strategies for when they leave. So for any one given goal, there's strategies in and strategies out. And so they know that that goal is not complete just by what they've done in, it's just a step that they've taken. And they know that with us, they're going to continue to work towards that goal when they leave. So for example, their goal might be housing. And while they're in the jail, maybe we're getting them on a housing wait list of some sort, something like that. But when they leave, maybe one of the strategies we're writing is, we're going to meet at the library and sit down on Zillow and Craigslist and look for affordable apartments for you.
Oh, so you do have a continuation of service. So
we do a full year of case management, and so our plan writing encompasses both in the jail and outside for a year.
See, a lot of people may not realize, or maybe that's not even being done. Usually, they seem to work in isolation of each other. So you guys continue with, I guess, the whole year, right? So they started within that year, and if that year includes them being released or whatnot, you continue.
It's a year from their release date. So if we have a client recidivate, their year clock starts again. Okay. We want to help people's full year outside of jail. We want to say to somebody, you have spent a full year in this community successfully, and then that's when we might be able to see them do it on their own without support.
The other thing we do is we go to a lot of community meetings, which I mentioned when we were on the panel. So we form relationships with all different types of community members. So if we have a client who needs to work out because that's his thing, like we have a person in the community that will offer free classes along with a recovery meeting right after. So we've made that connection for them. We call, he emails them, they're ready to go the day they get out. There might be a church, if they're religious, that we've made a connection with. We will sometimes meet them there and say, you know, this is Reverend so-and-so, this is John Doe. You know, you're gonna sit here and he's gonna talk to you and get you involved in his church. Whatever service they need, we have somebody on the outside that we can immediately connect them to, because in the beginning, we front-loaded ourselves by making all of these relationships within the community.
Now, if it's just you two, how do you pick who's qualified for this, or and what's the criteria? I mean, what does someone have to have?
So we determined, in the beginning we were taking everybody.
It's a lot.
And the whole process is about 8 hours within the jail for us to do all of these things, aside from OTA benefits, like SNAP,
like another
stamps.
6.
That's a whole different, just all of the assessments we do, the intake, the plan, that takes about 8 hours. Well, we were doing this for everybody, and people were getting released at 12:01, like she was talking about, and they never got their plan. So then we were trying to find them in the community. We didn't finish all of our assessments, so we didn't have all the information. So we decided to come up with 2 tiers.
I like what you said, that you actually, when you knew you didn't finish it, the first thing you went was to try to find that person inside the community. And I think that's definitely something that's lacking. But yeah, I didn't cut you off.
We have connections at a lot of different agencies, and we will ask them, have you seen this person? You know, we're looking for them on every possible list.
Wow.
So we divided them into 2 tiers. Tier 1 is somebody that gets an intake and a sit-down meeting. So they come into our office, whatever we can do for them in that hour to hour and a half. We do an intake, which is about 40 minutes, and then if they need doctor's appointments, if they need a Medicaid app, whatever we can do in that hour and a half, they get. Then they get this folder, which I should have brought, I could have showed you. Whatever we worked on goes in this folder. They get a bag. We put it all down in the intake. They put it in their property, and off they go.
Wow.
They can reach out to us in the community. We will then follow those clients for a year.
And if they show up, all they have to do after they're released without a release date is call us, schedule a meeting, and show up. And then at that point, they're added to our case management list for that year.
So tier 2 means you have a release date. So that is a whole different. You're getting your intake. You're getting your risk needs assessments.
More
which
permanent, or is that what the...
That's, you have a release date.
We know
so
when they're
there
leaving.
For several months.
So for discharge planning purposes, when we didn't know when they were leaving, we could make an appointment with the health provider, and they know it's coming from the STAR program, and the person doesn't get released, and we keep having to cancel, reschedule. It's just, it helps, using this service only for people with release dates helps us to maintain our connections within the community.
Yeah,
so that
they start to get frustrated with the inconsistency or the change of dates.
Exactly, and then it's a lot more work for us too. Rather than scheduling an appointment one time, we've now called and rescheduled it 3-4 times because the person doesn't get out when they thought they were going to. So once that release date's in the computer, it opens up a whole bunch more things we could do for them.
Now, let me ask you a question. When you have inmates that came into the system homeless and designated as, let's say, special needs, some form of mental health concern, how is placement done with them in the community? Because I know that in certain places that seems to be a complication between mental health and social services, where they both have different ideas of where that placement should be, and then you know, who kind of supersedes what, or what would be someone that's, let's say, homeless and special needs?
So we connect them to the Mental Health Association. That's their wheelhouse.
Okay.
We will assist in any way we can, but we really work together. Again, forming that bond before we even had our first client. So we just continue to follow up. You know, what do you think is the best spot for them? Where do you think? Do you need us to call? You know, we really they have the lead, and we just try to help them.
Right. So you kind of hand it off to them, but you still kind of oversee it.
Always.
So as their
the
re-entry case manager, we see ourselves as the hub of communication. So we don't want mental health working in their own silo, and let's say maybe drug court working in their own silo, and you know, maybe the person's going to OTA for benefits and seeing somebody else for whatever other service. We want to be the hub, making sure that if everyone's communicating with us, there's somebody who knows everything that's going on and can make sure that there's no duplication of services, that we're using all available resources, and that the client isn't, being torn in different directions, like maybe drug court saying they need to be here, but the mental health association thinks they need to be there. We can open this line of communication and say, well, we were in communication with not only the client, but all these different entities, and try to help find like a middle ground, or at least foster the communication.
I like what you said about the duplication of services. A lot
Yeah.
of inmates, when they feel that they have to redo something, or a lot of ex-offenders or clients, when they feel they have to duplicate something, it becomes frustrating, and then we've got to see that resistance. You guys, towards the end, this is great, guys. This is why I think my audience would love to get a little bit of what you guys discussed inside there, was how custody or how correctional officers play into aiding in reentry, or just helping with the programs being provided. So I'm going to kind of let you guys free flow this, because I think it's very important that we see how we partner with each other. Even though we feel that we have different missions, it's the same in regards to the outcome, where we need to be. So I think this is more of like a cross-perspective understanding of, okay, we know custody's got to provide safety and security, we know that, but we also know that there's an interaction that they have with the inmate population that's also very pivotal in their need for the inmate to change, or in some cases the want for the inmate to change. So I think part of this conversation actually kind of blends into that internal want. So where do you see, in your experience, custody or correctional officers playing a role in either the rehabilitative process behind the wall, or even so far as the reentry aspect?
Yeah. Well, our officers are wonderful. Just to start, like the Morris County Correctional Facility, I come from a social work background, and I didn't grow up in a law enforcement family or a community where I really knew the local law enforcement. I had no idea what to expect coming in as a social service provider, and I could just say I was very pleasantly surprised. Our officers were welcoming, respectful. They put our safety first and foremost. I've never for a moment in my work felt unsafe at the jail. Whereas in my previous work as a community social worker going into people's homes, I never knew what to expect, and I wasn't protected there. So just to start off the conversation, we couldn't be happier with our officers.
And as I said, I think officers, I mean, not just, this is a national audience here, I think they need to hear that, because they don't hear that. And the funny thing is that I think how we're able to work on changes that we need is if we work well together behind the wall first, or just in the situations that are presented to us. So I obviously my audience is going to appreciate that in a heartbeat.
I think that also our sheriff, I think it starts at the top.
Oh, for sure.
Sheriff Gannon is remarkable and very forward thinking, which trickles down to the undersheriff, Warden Klein, into all the different officers. The officers are really kind, caring people. Now, they absolutely toe the line. It's very black and white, but when they can say a kind word, they're saying that kind word. When they're trying to encourage somebody because they've seen them come back 10 times and they're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, let's get you involved in the STAR program. I think they'll really be able to help you, because they follow up with you in the community, and it seems that once you get out in the community, like you're good here, we have you stable, you get out in the community and you're right back in. Maybe they can help, further you along. And again, like I always say, when they ask why and you get to understand somebody's story, it changes your heart and the way you think. Yes, they've made mistakes, but we're all human. We all deserve a second chance. So I think when they ask their life story and they find out all these terrible things, it's not like you were born and, okay, I'm going to be a drug addict and a thief.
Yeah.
I think people don't realize the positive interactions, staff in general obviously, but also more specifically on the custody side, that they have with the inmate population. I mean, I opened up a venue the other day, and just the comments that were coming back were really powerful, because I also felt that some of these officers found a need for themselves. I mean, listen, we all want to say that we accomplished something. I think so. So, I think it's great to hear someone come back and say, hey, Ganj, that advice you gave me was great. Or I think it's great when, in some cases, they say you have these inmates acting up, and then all of a sudden your presence on the unit, not because you have to act in authority, but just the fact that they respect you. And as soon as you come in, they sit down and they listen, and then you actually see an effort of them to make that adjustment. And it's just great to see that partnership at play. And I would also think that what you provide and that balance what custody provide also makes the facility safer. Obviously, the rehabilitation, keeping them busy. I agree with you 100%. I believe you mentioned that on the panel, and then the partnership of that safe environment so they can focus on what's needed. I mean, that's why we're against bullying, right? You can't force to, I can't learn if I'm going to get beat up at 4 o'clock. Well, I think the atmosphere that is in line with what's needed for rehabilitation is something that custody helps provide, and then you guys finish the effort, and together there's that combination of safety.
And I think what we're really dealing with is behavioral health. So what inspires these people to behave in the way that they do, or what maybe is triggering them to behave in a way that maybe they shouldn't? And I think that boredom, lack of stimulation, lack of feeling respected, hopelessness, not knowing what's going to happen when they leave, those things cause people to behave in a much different way when they're incarcerated. But when they work with us and they have something to look forward to, we give them things to do in the cell, like different anger worksheets, different crossword puzzles. We want to keep their mind going. And I think it really, us being there helps the custody staff because they have a more positive inmate with a person who has a better mentality, and it helps behaviorally. It really does, which I think makes all of us safer and happier.
It gives them that path, and they know that I need to complete this. If I mess up, I have something to lose. That's the key. And people don't realize that we enforce our rules through the process of loss versus gain. If you give someone something that they never had, it doesn't motivate them as much as taking away something that they're used to. So like when you have an inmate that's used to program, used to do what they got to do, sometimes, believe it or not, they think twice because they know, well, if I do this, I'm so close to getting this, or this, and it makes them think. And I believe that also provides a safer environment for staff, like you said, keeping them busy, keeping them motivated.
I think you hit the nail on the head though. Respect on all sides. If everybody can have the common courtesy to have respect and show respect, you'll get respect.
That's the key. Now, in closing, would you guys like to say anything to my audience? I believe that the panel discussion was very well balanced. I like how the fact that, and I don't know if it's just something that seems to come out naturally now as opposed to before. I like the fact that we're involving all departments and we're not just holding custody on the sidelines. We're trying to pull them out. I see some of them even here, and people are like, well, what do they have to do with reentry, or what do they have to do with rehabilitation? Guys, you don't know. I mean, their interaction is very powerful, and also, believe it or not, we're put in a position of authority, which also gives us a chance to be in a position to possibly be a positive role model. So I think it's good for my staff or the people that follow this channel to hear that perspective. And I thought the panel that you presented was very balanced and able to, I like the fact that it was incorporated in, especially when you have people from the audience coming in asking those questions. So someone feels it, they know it's needed. But just in closing, in regards to reentry, the communication from the inside out, I mean, you guys are trailblazing, and the fact that you said that you're starting something behind the wall and chasing after within the year in the community, that's not being done. So I guess in closing, what's a recommendation for other agencies to start following this, and maybe other agencies to look into that collective work behind the wall from, I guess, eclectic actually, from all different departments working together to make sure, because ultimately it's a safe community, correct? So what would be some advice that you would toss out there?
I'll end with, I think we all have the same goal. We want a safe and healthy community. And we might all have different skills that we could bring to the table to achieve that goal. So a corrections officer is able to do something that I could never do, but I can do something that maybe they couldn't. So I think if we all respect each other's differences and value each other's experience and bring it together towards our common goal and just really collaborate.
I was just gonna say, bring everybody to the table. Everybody got into both fields to help people. So if we all come together, community, corrections, reentry, government, just in general, if everybody comes to the table and we all work for the same goal, I think you'll see the recidivism go down.
Right, and as I said, I like what you mentioned about helping each other, and I also like that we're talking about the balance. So I mean, I think it's fair that when we start seeing these changes happening, that we do get frontline somewhere in line to participate in these changes, but also to be part of those changes, to have an influence, because, believe it or not, they can make anything work. In my opinion, I know we can. But it would be good to see them be a part of this success, because what you ladies are doing is extremely successful. And I think a lot of custody staff would, I think, would like to be a part of that success, whether they admit it or not.
Well, it wouldn't be possible without you guys, because we couldn't go into that facility without the feeling of safety and security that we get. And truthfully, I love going to work every day. And I didn't think I was going to. I thought that I was going to go in there and every officer was going to be like, what is this tree hugger trying to do? Let's ignore her, whatever. But it's not the experience that I've had. And I really think respecting each other's different approaches to the same goal is the way to do it.
Yeah, I think that's also because the
way to do
evolution of correction we're at
Yeah.
now. I mean, I don't think there's many now, but there were some that were resistant to change. But then they realized, well, if you're resistant to the change, there's positive evolution for us as well. You know, from guard to officer.
Yeah.
So if you're going back to that warehouse phase, you're losing out on a positive evolution. If
Yeah.
you embrace the word officer, it encompasses what we do, multiple roles that we play, and I don't know why you'd want to be resistant to that. And also that level of respect, because when you're fighting for that level of respect, and not to minimize what guards do, it's not my purpose, but in what we do as correctional officers, if you still embrace a primitive term, and again, it's not to negate the history of that term, but it's a very strong history, but in an effort to move over, people, I think, are going to embrace the word officer and see that more professional as a word guard, because they may just see we're just standing there and
You're
not
doing so
interacting.
much more than
so much
that.
more, and that's great to have someone like you say that.
I think even on the outside the police departments, I was raised in a family of policemen, and I have seen the change from when I was a kid to now. And I think police departments, not just corrections, I think it takes us all, because they're sometimes the first line of defense.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I think we all need to work together to truly make a change.
I agree
make a difference.
100%, and that's why what I would encourage, obviously, is I would even encourage for agencies that aren't doing this, some cross-perspective training where we have all departments sitting there just speaking about what each department does and how we interact. Just a simple dialogue like that would bring, hey, well, I want to volunteer in that, because if you appreciate what I do, now I'm going to go ahead and say, well, let me tell you how I appreciate it. And it just kind of builds a better understanding. But again, ladies, if you haven't, I want to thank you for the service and stuff that you provide. A lot of people may not see what you guys do, but I want you to know there are many that do, and hopefully with my little audience here, there are many more that will not only understand what you do a little bit, but maybe instead of, like you guys are trailblazing right now, maybe they'll follow in your footsteps and try to do something. Again, it's all about the safer community,
Absolutely.
correct? And the partnership to make it happen.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right, guys, so this is kind of like our third panel discussion. I've been doing a lot of running around because I'm trying to get the interviews as the event is still going. So first off, again, thank you guys for obviously sitting down with me again. Just as like I said, the third time we're actually doing it with the audience here. So thank you guys also for continuing watching me run through this and trying to get people where they need to be. But what I want to do right now is, before we come to a close, I have one last interview that I felt was needed, extremely powerful. And guys, you know how we talk about that there's an isolation here? We feel that we kind of walk around in an us versus them mentality. When I sat and heard this young woman's speech, to me it brought the power of what we do as staff and how well we can impact someone's life, and also hold them accountable fairly, to say. So I had to get this interview in, so obviously thank you for being able to take part in this interview. And guys, this is the bridging of the gap. This is the key here. This is the bridging of the gap on any perspective. So if you don't mind, you mind introducing yourself to my audience?
Yes, my name is Dawn Freeman. I am the president and CEO of the Securus Foundation.
Okay, now this is all. I'd like to also introduce everybody else on the panel. So I start with the gentleman all the way to my left.
My name is Kevin Dixon. I'm the retiring Deputy Warden of the Passaic County Jail and the new Director of Justice Agency Engagement for the Securus Foundation.
I'm Dr. Kim Boss. I am Clinical Director of Arch Service Agency and also an Executive Board member for New Jersey ACA.
I am Bob Ricardella. I am the President of the New Jersey chapter of the American Correctional Association.
Now guys, a couple of days ago, I did a video on how we could be a role model behind the wall. And the reason why I did a video like that was because I'm trying to also present a balanced perspective. So I thought what would be great was, when I did a video about how to be a role model behind the wall, I thought it would be great to see the interaction of correctional officers who are willing to share their story and see how much they had an impact around the world that's actually quite negative. And the response was phenomenal. People were willing to share their stories. And the cool thing is there was support from the group who felt like, you know what, that this was needed. Like, we always constantly hear the negative, but it's great to know that there's a positive here. And obviously, believe it or not, that positive does lean towards someone being successful if the belief happens somewhere along that transition. So I would like to hear a little bit about your story.
Can I say one thing? First of all, I want to just tell everybody watching of what a great presentation we had today, what a great conference, and I was blown away by Dawn's presentation. It really hit the heart. You know, a lot of times in corrections, we are judged by our failures, and our failures are always the first thing you see in the newspapers because that's what they want to focus on. And we never really focus enough on our successes. And hearing you speak today and seeing that success live and right there and everything was just fantastic. It was wonderful.
And the balance of that success, where you have someone who was successful but knew exactly where credit was to be placed. And it blew me away. I also noticed something too. Now, one person while you were speaking was looking at their cell phone. They were not looking at social media.
Right.
They were glued in.
Well, they were glued in. But what got our initial attention, I'm sure we would agree, is your story. So let's talk about your story a bit. And obviously that's a sense of vulnerability. So thank you for having the courage to bring it up.
Oh, absolutely. So, as a young woman at the age of 12, I found myself being in and out of group homes, essentially homeless, and was taken in by a friend. A friend of mine, her mother welcomed me into her home. By the time I turned 13, I was pregnant. By the time I turned 14, I had a stillborn child. By the time I was 17, I was an exotic dancer. By the time I was 18, I was married. I had a child. By the time I was 19, I was divorced. And it just really didn't seem that life was fair to me. And I was an angry young woman. I was a very angry young woman because I felt like my family that I should be able to depend on wasn't there to support me. But, you know, having people outside of my biological family talk to me and encourage me to say that I'm more than what I had been through is really what helped me to drive and push towards more, because somebody else saw something in me, even if it wasn't my own family, and that actually, it meant a lot to me, and it helped me to really determine where I wanted my life to go and then make the investment in myself to get there. And I went to a group home. So I had been in a group home when I was younger. I have been charged with a felony before, so thank the Lord I didn't actually do jail time, but I had been charged with a felony, a couple of misdemeanors. It was at a time I was going to college to get my bachelor's degree, and I had 2 young children at the time. And I just didn't want to mess up my life. I was really making a diligent, concerted effort to get and stay on the right track, and then to be faced with this experience of trying to figure out, okay, now what do I do? Because if I get convicted of this felony, all this work I've been doing thus far in my life is for nothing. And so, by the grace of God, I was able to take a plea, and the felony charge was dismissed, and I ended up just having a misdemeanor charge that led to a year of good behavior and some anger management courses. But it really made me come to terms with, I have to be more intentional about how I react to what other people do. And that's really where some people, I think, miss the boat, is because somebody does something to you and you feel like you have to prove something to them, but really they're just sucking you in because they may or may not have anything that they're working towards in their life, and they don't know what you're working on, and if you give in to whatever they have going on or whatever situation they put you in, now you've hurt yourself, you haven't hurt them at all. And so that was something that I actually made a conscious effort of, just not letting every person that I interact with push my buttons and get me going, because I'm the one that suffers at the end of the day, not them.
Now, you're talking also during when you were doing the speech,
yes,
you also talked about the importance of support.
Absolutely.
Family support, and even just outside support that wasn't expected. Absolutely. So let's first talk about the importance of family support. So basically, you felt that at one point you weren't supported by your family, correct? So how did that impact your position?
Yeah, not having what I thought my mother should do. So every young person, and I think a lot of adults still struggle with this too, believes that a mother or a father is supposed to do X, Y, or Z. You have this kind of fictitious thought or assumption in your mind of this is what a parent is supposed to do, and they use that as an excuse to not do the right thing because their parent, didn't provide whatever. But the reality of it is, as we know, and as a parent now, that children don't come with instruction manuals. And as you're going through life, as a parent, you're trying to figure out each next new phase that you're experiencing yourself as well as raising another human being. But it's in that, I think for me, I got to a point where I stopped letting family be the reason why I did not succeed. So whether my mother was there or not, I was still going to succeed because I believed in me. And ultimately, looking back almost 25 years later, I have an amazing relationship with my mother now. But I have an amazing relationship because I don't place a higher expectation on her than I have for myself. And I understand that she is who she is, but she doesn't determine where I go in my future. I determine that. And that's where I think a lot of people who find themselves in the system get hung up, is because they expect, well, if my family doesn't do this, why should anybody else care? And that was actually the exact opposite for me. It was people who were not blood related to me that were who came into my life, encouraged me, and it was different people at different times. Whether it was at school or people at work or someone that I've interacted with from, a community partner perspective, that little bit of encouragement or that little bit of direction that they gave me helped me to be able to move to the next level. So I would just say that, having the balance, yes, if you have family support, don't take that for granted because not everybody has it. But even if you don't have it, don't let that be your excuse for not moving forward.
That's a great point, because whether you have family support or not, or you're in the system or not, having people in your life who realize something in you, because even if you have parents and they love you, but they just can't turn you on to that next level where somebody else can validate you and say, well, you could be, this, or you could be a leader, or you could be all these other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dawn, I wanted to ask you, what did you have to say to yourself to realize that it could be done? I've got history of working in corrections, and one of the challenges to working with inmates was you can give them that encouragement and that feedback, but they wouldn't believe it. So what do you think anyone, inmate, anybody would need to hear to say, yes, this is something that can be done? Why would you doubt yourself? How would you answer? What would you say to them?
To be
honest,
honest,
what do you think they need to say to themselves?
It's what they need to say to themselves. It's 1,000,000%. To be honest, for me, when I found myself, 17 years old, had a drug dealer boyfriend, we're smoking weed all day, everybody just kicking it and drinking it, and I woke up one day and I was just like, there's got to be more to life than this.
What made you believe that, though? Because I think a lot of times we'll tell people that, and I know historically what I've heard people say to me, well, I'll believe Scarface, but I can't believe the Cosby Show. I'm like, you can't believe that an African-American doctor and an African-American lawyer married one another and had kids?
Right.
No, why not?
Right. Because they haven't seen that example. Right, in the flesh and blood, where they've interacted. But for me, so kind of to go to the original question, it's something that you have to believe within yourself. I woke up one day and said, there's got to be more to life than what I'm doing on a daily basis. And then I actively pursue something other than, and it was, again, people that I didn't necessarily know that exposed me to other opportunities. And you have to get out of your comfort zone. If you stay around people, or you stay around the hood, or you stay around the projects where you're just around other people that's just going to get their food stamps and their welfare check, and that's what everybody does. They go to the club Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and there's nothing else going on. Of course, that's your ceiling. Right? But if you start getting exposed and being around, even if it's for an hour or two, not something you see on TV, but physically going or having someone sit down and have a conversation with you and saying, yeah, my family, we traveled to Belize. Like, Belize, I never even heard of Belize, right? But it's something like, wow, so there's something outside of these four corners that I've been in for my whole life. Yes.
And see, what I
Yes,
love
there is.
about what you're saying and about your energy and your spirit is, I think everybody knows that, but you were courageous enough to actually say, I'm stepping out there.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the big difference.
Absolutely.
Because I think a lot of people know that there's other things out there,
Right.
but are they courageous enough to do that? And you did.
Another thing is that when I saw you giving the speech, one thing was I saw accountability. I saw no excuses. You know, I know older inmates that still use their families as excuses, and you just said something key. You got to let that go. You got to be able to move forward. But I want to ask something. I don't know if you've ever been asked this before, but you spoke up there about second chances and technically being a million chances, right? How did that affect you with the relationship with your mom? Like, all right, so I'm sorry, is that okay to ask
No,
that?
go for it.
All right, so my thing is that you're preaching by example. That's why I'm asking that. So you're not just talking about someone doing it and not practicing. You obviously had to have that relationship with your mom again, right? There had to be that second chance. So
A million chances.
You gave your mom a second.
I did a million
second
chances.
So what
A
opened up
million.
your mind to the second chance? Was it what you what you got from others, or what you had to do first?
It was what I had to do first, which was own my own issues. And whatever struggles I had nothing to do with my mother, because she wasn't making me do anything. I was doing it. And when I looked at me controlling myself, then when I would interact with my mom and I saw how she handled things because that's all she knew how to do. She couldn't give me what she didn't have. And it was a challenge because I felt like, well, you're the mother, you're supposed to teach me. But the reality of it is my situation changed that I became the mother. I became the mother to my mother. I became the mother to my brother. I became the mother to my nephew. But I have the self-control. If I was in a situation today, if you and I were at a store and my mother wanted something and she didn't get what she wanted, she would cuss you out. I would never do that. I would never do that because I have self-control. Because whether you give her what she wants or not, or you give me what I want or not, I know I'm going to be okay. Because I could go over here. But some people feel that urge that they have to lash out or prove something. I've come to enough self-awareness that I don't have to prove anything to you or anyone else. I have self-control, and that is the true height of being an independent individual. Forget being a woman, just an independent individual where another person cannot push your buttons or make you do anything that you don't want to do. So when it came to my mother, and there are definitely people have been in my life that have been, critical of my mother, and I would say there's things that, as I've grown up that I could look at and say, yeah, I probably shouldn't have given her another chance. But at the end of the day, it's by God's grace that I'm sitting here, right? So how dare I pass judgment on her when nobody passed judgment on me? And when I got to that point within myself and with my relationship with my mother, I also noticed how much of an amazing grandmother she is. Right? So she has never apologized to me or my brother for the experiences that she took us through when she was younger. As a matter of fact, she will make an excuse about it. If you ask her today, she would still make an excuse. She likes to glaze over that part. But when it comes to her as a grandmother to my children, she is amazing. Something she could not give me at all as a mother. But she's an amazing grandmother, and I would not dare take that from my children. Because that helps to shape who they become. Because now they have those other experiences in addition to what I can offer them.
So first off, again, I want to thank you for taking your time coming. I know that you have airplane to catch in about 7 minutes, but I do got one last question. I have a friend of mine that's actually interested in working in nonprofit, actually starting her own nonprofit. And I know that you actually, I was trying to follow a little bit on your speech, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I know that you're involved in a nonprofit, and a lot of it has to deal with reentry, correct?
Correct.
So you actually interact with, obviously, a lot of individuals who've been in the system and been out. So you've shared their stories, you listen to their concerns. I think my audience would be very interested in, for once, hearing the positive interactions that maybe some of these ex-offenders, clients, what they were able to share with you in regards to an impact maybe a staff member had on their life, because I know it exists.
Right, absolutely. I mean, from my own experiences, I want to first say that, my stepfather is a 20-year retired homicide detective. My stepbrother also did 4 years in Texas Department of Corrections. right? I have another cousin who has been a police officer and then went on to do 18, serve 18 years as a correctional officer in Tennessee DOC. So I have that experience with family members that work within the correctional or public safety space in not being exempt, right? Not being exempt from them having a loved one or a family member or a close friend or someone that has gone through the system, and having that compassion and empathy for the individuals that they interact with. My experience is because I've come from really more of a vendor background, was my initial exposure to corrections at a deeper level. But my interactions once I started my nonprofit of going and engaging with agencies and seeing the passion of the staff, whether it's the program staff, whether it's the volunteers and how you interact with them, having that word of encouragement for the returning citizens or the residents that you work with, it really does matter. It really does matter, regardless to what you hear in the media, regardless to what you hear some advocates who are not educated about what actually takes place inside a correctional facility says, that it does matter. It matters to the individuals that are going through or that are in your care or custody and come out on the other side, because they can look and say honestly that if it wasn't for CEO XYZ, I probably would have just succumbed to whatever was going on. But they pulled me to the side and gave me a word of encouragement of, I see something different in you. You know you're better than this. Or they may even know your family members, right? Where it's like, okay, I know your family. I know that's not how you were raised. And a lot of times you don't have to be extreme, right? So you don't have to necessarily subscribe to the whole hug a thug mentality, because that's not for everybody, and I get that. But just seeing and treating people like a human, and just respecting them as individuals, that means so much more to them, because what I found working with people that have come out on the other side, they will do anything for you if you just give them a little bit of dignity and respect, especially as someone in a position of authority, whether you're a CEO or a warden or the director or a jailer, whatever that is. If you respect them just a little bit, they will go to move the heaven and earth to make you proud of them, because you acknowledge and you see that in them. That really does matter. And so for all of you that do that, just be encouraged and know that even if it may not be the cool thing or the accepted thing or the cultural thing that is going on within your agency, know that at the end of the day, when you show up and you're talking about care and custody and protecting and serving, that you're doing that for the individuals that you encounter every single day, and they do listen. It does matter. Keep up the good work, stay encouraged, don't give up, and just know that anything that you set your mind to, and if you believe in yourself, you can believe in another individual to be able to go to that next level.
I just want to say, Dawn, unless anybody else has anything closing real quick. Dawn, I know you got to go. Again, I love the speech. I saw a different perspective, and I think that's where the middle road is. Corrections, unfortunately, doesn't lie on any side of a political spectrum. Absolutely. Left, the right, it's the middle. And I think it's conversations like this that forces people to realize the answer is not as hard as people may think. Absolutely. It's for people to have the courage to talk to people that you may think represents different sides. Very impressed on,
and that's why this place and time is really important, because both sides seem to be meeting in the middle. Whether you're looking to save money or whether you're looking to improve people's lives, we have that perfect synergy right now. The planets are aligning, and we just take advantage of it now. We can accomplish great things.
Absolutely.
But Dawn, I was blown away by your presentation today, and it was inspiring.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in, and have a safe flight back.
All right, thank you.